Yuna stood alone in the center of the grand chamber on Orith Station. The room was enormous. Thousands of alien delegates sat in curved rows that rose up like the inside of a shell, and every single one of them was looking down at her. She was the smallest person in the room. She was always the smallest person in the room. She held the data tablet steady in her hands and spoke clearly. For the 11th consecutive year, Earth formally requests sovereign trade rights for its people and its colonies. We ask only for what every species in this chamber already has. Silence. Then a low rumble of laughter from somewhere in the upper rows. High Speaker Vorin sat at the highest point of the chamber. He was Pilari, tall, silver-skinned, with long fingers that he folded across his chest like a man watching a child try to reach a shelf that was too high. His voice echoed through the hall, calm and almost bored. Ambassador Yuna. The Council appreciates Earth's continued enthusiasm. However, as a Category 6 primitive species, humanity has not yet demonstrated the cultural maturity required for expanded galactic participation. Your request is noted and denied. More laughter. A Drenhai delegate, broad, gray-scaled with 4 arms, leaned toward his neighbor and said something that made them both snort. He did not bother to whisper. Yuna did not flinch. She bowed once, turned on her heel, and walked out. Her shoes clicked against the polished floor, and the sound followed her all the way to the door. She did not look back. Do-hyun was waiting in the human embassy, 3 corridors away from the grand chamber. The embassy was small, 2 rooms and a closet they called an office. He was sitting on the edge of a desk, arms crossed, watching a screen filled with intercepted alien communications. He was a thin man with tired eyes, the kind of man who always looked like he had not slept in 2 days, because he usually had not. Same result? He asked without looking up. Same result, Yuna said. She set the tablet down and leaned against the wall. Vorin did not even pretend to consider it this time. Do-hyun turned the screen toward her. Then, this will not surprise you. The Drenhai have been sending private messages to 6 council members for the last 4 months. They want Ashwal taken away from us. Yuna read the messages. Her face did not change, but her hands tightened into fists at her sides. Ashwal was humanity's only colony outside the solar system. 200,000 people lived there. Families, children, farmers, engineers. The council had given it to humanity like someone tossing a bone to a dog, and now even that was too much. They are calling us an infestation, Do-hyun said quietly. I know what they are calling us, Yuna replied. 12,000 light-years away, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean on Earth, Admiral Taeho walked through a corridor that did not officially exist. The walls were reinforced steel. The lights hummed with a low blue glow. Armed guards stood at every door, and every door required 3 separate codes to open. Jiho met him in the main hangar. He was younger than Taeho by 15 years, with messy hair and oil stains on his sleeves. Behind him, stretching the entire length of the underground cavern, sat a warship. It was black, smooth, and shaped like a blade. It did not look like anything the galaxy had ever seen, because it was not. How many? Taeho asked. 47 completed, Jiho said, another 30 in final stages. The gravity lance cannons are tested and ready. The drive systems are stable. Taeho looked at the ship for a long time. 60 years ago, a human deep space probe had found a wrecked alien vessel drifting in the dark between stars. The Council never knew about it. Humanity had spent decades pulling that wreck apart, studying every wire, every engine coil, every piece of technology that the so-called elder species thought humans were too stupid to understand. They were wrong. Speed it up, Taeho said. I want everything ready within 6 months. Jiho looked at him carefully. You think something is coming? Tejo did not answer. He just kept staring at the ship. On Ashwal, the sky was orange at sunset, and the air smelled like copper. Captain Hana stood on the bridge of the warship Black Tide, docked at the colony's small orbital station. Her crew was running combat drills for the third time that week, and some of them were starting to complain. Her first officer, a young man named Kijun, approached her carefully. "Captain, the crew is wondering why we are drilling so hard. We are stationed at a peaceful colony. There has not been a threat here in years." Hana turned to look at him. She was not a tall woman, but something in her eyes made people step back. "Tell me, Kijun, when a wolf walks into a field of sheep, which sheep survives? The one that was already running?" Kijun opened his mouth, then closed it, then nodded and went back to his station. Hana watched the stars through the bridge window. Somewhere out there, someone was making decisions about Ashwal's future, and she was certain those decisions were not kind. She was right. On Orith Station, in a chamber that no public record showed existed, High Speaker Voran pressed his silver thumb against a document displayed on a floating screen. The document was titled Order 1107. It authorized the Drenhai Empire to conduct a pacification operation on the human colony of Ashwal, using whatever force was deemed necessary. The language was clean and official. It said nothing about the 200,000 people who lived there. Voran told himself it was necessary. Humans were growing too fast, learning too quickly, asking too many questions. They needed to be reminded of their place. A small strike, a contained operation, and the problem would be solved. No one would care about one small colony of one small species. He signed the order and turned off the screen. He had no idea what he had just begun. The first bomb hit Ashwal at dawn. There was no warning, no message, no declaration of war, just fire falling from the sky like rain. The Drenhai fleet appeared in orbit without a single transmission and opened fire on the colony below. Buildings exploded. Streets turned to rivers of dust and glass. A school in the Eastern District collapsed in less than 3 seconds, and the screams that came from underneath it did not stop for a very long time. Fleet Marshal Ickes stood on the bridge of his flagship, arms folded behind his back, watching the surface burn through a tactical display. He was Drenhai, 8 feet tall, gray-scaled, with 4 arms and a jaw built like a hammer. He had conquered 11 worlds in his career and never once lost a battle. He looked at Ashwal the way a man looks at an insect beneath his boot. "Continue bombardment for another 20 minutes, he said calmly. "Then send the ground forces. I want this finished by nightfall." On the surface, Commander Somi was thrown against a wall when the blast hit her barracks. Dust filled her lungs. Blood ran down the side of her face. She could hear people screaming somewhere outside, and beneath the screaming, she could hear the deep rolling thunder of more bombs falling. She pulled herself up, grabbed her weapon, kicked open a door that was hanging sideways off its frame. Outside, the world was burning. Somi did not freeze. She did not cry. She had 63 soldiers under her command, and roughly 800 civilians in the surrounding blocks, and every second she stood still was a second someone died. She activated her comm unit and began shouting orders. "All units fall back to the mining tunnels beneath Sector 7. Take every civilian you can find. Move now." The mining tunnels were deep, dark, and spread beneath Ashwal's surface like veins under skin. They were not designed for war, but war had come anyway, and Somi would use whatever she had. Within 2 hours, she had gathered over 2,000 people underground. Soldiers, families, children, old men who could barely walk. She organized them. She set up defensive positions at every tunnel entrance. She placed traps in the corridors using mining explosives and broken equipment. When the Drenhai ground troops finally entered the tunnels, armored and confident, they walked straight into hell. The first squad was buried alive under a collapsed ceiling. The second was hit from 3 directions at once by soldiers they never saw. The Drenhai were bigger and stronger, but the tunnels were tight and dark, and the humans knew every turn. Somi lost people. She lost friends. A young soldier named Unji died holding a corridor so that a group of children could escape deeper into the network. Somi watched it happen and kept fighting, because stopping meant everyone else died too. On Earth, the news arrived like a knife to the chest. Every screen, every device, every broadcast channel carried the same footage. Ashwall burning, ships in orbit, bodies in the streets. The world did not need speeches or explanations. Everyone understood what had happened. The silence that followed the first reports was the most dangerous sound in human history. Then Admiral Tejo spoke. His message was broadcast from the Pacific Command Center to every human ship, every colony, every station, every listening device on Earth and beyond. His face was calm. His voice was steady. He said only 9 words. They chose this. Remember that. All stations, mobilize. There was no argument, no debate, no politicians asking questions, or committees requesting time. Every nation on Earth, every faction, every colony and outpost responded with the same answer. Yes. On Orith Station, Yuna walked into the Grand Chamber for the last time as a petitioner. She did not wait for permission to speak. She stepped into the center of the floor, and her voice rang off the high walls. Ashwall has been attacked. Tens of thousands of our people are dead. Women, children, civilians who had no weapons and no warning. This was not war. This was slaughter, and this council authorized it. The chamber was quiet. Vorin stared down at her from his seat, and for the first time, he was not smiling. The council expresses its concern, Vorin said carefully. However, the Drenhai operation falls within the bounds of internal galactic security. We urge restraint from all parties. Yuna stared at him. Restraint, she repeated. The words sat in the air like poison. As she passed through the lower corridor, a young Pelari aide stepped out from behind a pillar. Her name was Lhasa, and her silver hands were shaking. She pressed a small data chip into Yuna's palm, without a word. Yuna looked at her. Lhasa looked back, with eyes full of fear, and something else. Shame. Yuna closed her fingers around the chip, and kept walking. Back in the embassy, Do-hyun examined the chip. His face went pale. It contained Vorin's personal authorization, Order 1107, with his biometric signature. Proof that the High Speaker of the Galactic Council had personally approved the massacre of human civilians. Send it to Tejo, Yuna said. On Earth, Jiho stood in the main hangar of the Pacific facility and gave the order he had been preparing for his entire career. Every hidden shipyard on the planet activated simultaneously. Beneath oceans, inside mountains, under deserts, inside hollowed-out asteroids in the belt. Engines roared to life. One by one, the ships of Project Horizon rose into the sky. They were black. They were fast. They were armed with weapons the galaxy did not know existed, and there were far more of them than anyone had ever imagined. Do-hyun recorded a single message and broadcast it on every galactic frequency, open, unencrypted, in every major language of the Council species. To the Galactic Council and the Drenhai Empire. You struck our people without cause or honor. Earth does not forgive, Earth does not forget, and Earth does not ask permission to defend its own. The message hit every relay station in the galaxy within hours. On 100 different worlds, on 1,000 different ships, alien commanders listened to it and felt something they had never felt when thinking about humans before. Fear. Admiral Tejo boarded his flagship, the Iron Dawn. It was the largest ship in the human fleet, a carrier-class warship bristling with gravity lance batteries and carrying 6 full squadrons of fighters. He stood on the bridge, looked at the star map, and plotted a course for Ashwal. The fleet moved out. 79 warships, silent and dark, cutting through space faster than anything the galaxy had ever tracked. Galactic sensor networks picked up the fleet and sent automated alerts to Council Military Command. The alerts were flagged, reflagged, and then flagged again, because the speed readings did not make sense. Humans were not supposed to have ships that fast. Humans were not supposed to have ships at all. On the bridge of the Iron Dawn, Tejo watched the stars blur past the windows and said nothing. He did not need to. Everyone on that ship, on every ship in the fleet, already knew what was coming. The galaxy had kicked a hornet's nest. The Drenhai fleet around Ashwal expected reinforcements. What they got was the opposite. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Ashwal system, and for a brief moment, the Drenhai sensor officers stared at their screens in confusion. The ships had arrived in half the time any known vessel could cross that distance. The readings were wrong. They had to be wrong. They were not wrong. Captain Hana stood on the bridge of the Black Tide, her hands behind her back, her eyes locked on the tactical display. The Drenhai had 46 warships in orbit around Ashwal. They were big ships, heavy, armored, built like floating fortresses. Each one carried enough firepower to flatten a city, and they had already proven that. Hana had 14 ships in her vanguard group. She did not care about the numbers. All ships, attack formation, weapons hot. Do not wait for them to react, she said. Her voice was flat and cold, like a blade being drawn from its sheath. The Black Tide surged forward, and the vanguard followed. The Drenhai commander in orbit was a captain named Rook, a career officer who had never fought a real battle in his life. His job had been to hold orbit over a defenseless colony, and he had been doing it well. When the human ships appeared on his sensors, he hesitated for exactly 11 seconds. Those 11 seconds cost him 3 ships. The gravity lance cannons fired for the first time in actual combat, and they did exactly what Jiho had designed them to do. The lances punched through Drenhai shields as if they were not there. The first ship broke apart along its spine, splitting in half like a piece of dry wood. The second lost its entire forward section. The third simply exploded. Ruck began screaming orders, but his fleet was already in chaos. The human ships were smaller and faster, weaving between the Drenhai formation like wolves running through a herd of bulls. Every time the Drenhai guns turned to track one ship, 2 more were already behind them, firing into their engines and shield generators. Minho led his fighter squadron through the middle of the battle. He was flying a light interceptor, fast, fragile, and armed with short-range gravity missiles. His job was to punch a hole in the Drenhai formation so that Hana's cruisers could reach the command ship. It was a dangerous job. Minho loved dangerous jobs. Stay tight, stay fast, do not stop moving, he told his squadron over comms. 12 fighters in a diamond formation, diving straight into the heaviest concentration of enemy fire. They lost 2 pilots in the first 30 seconds. A Drenhai point defense turret caught a fighter named Aaron's ship, dead center. Another pilot, Sunwoo, took a hit to his engines and spiraled into the hull of a Drenhai destroyer. Minho watched both of them die on his display and kept flying. He would mourn later. Right now, he had a mission. His squadron tore through the Drenhai defensive screen, launching missiles at the command ship's engine array. The explosions rippled across the massive vessel's stern, and its engines flickered and died. The ship began to drift. "Hole is open," Minho called. "Hana, it is yours." The Black Tide came through the gap like a hammer through glass. Hana directed her cruisers in a concentrated volley directly into the crippled command ship's midsection. The Drenhai flagship broke apart, its wreckage tumbling slowly toward the planet below. Fleet Marshal Ickes was not on that ship. He was on his personal flagship at the rear of the formation, and when he saw his command ship die, something inside him went cold. No Drenhai marshal had retreated in 300 years, but his fleet was being torn apart by ships that should not have existed, by a species that should not have been able to fight, and every second he stayed was another ship lost. He gave the order to withdraw. The Drenhai fleet, what was left of it, turned and ran. They left behind 19 destroyed ships, 6 crippled vessels, and thousands of dead. It was the worst defeat the Drenhai Empire had suffered in living memory, and it had been delivered by a species they had called primitive. Ickes sent a furious transmission to the Galactic Council as his fleet limped away. Send everything you have. These humans are animals. They fight like nothing we have ever seen. If you do not crush them now, you will never get another chance. On the surface of Ashwal, Somi heard the explosions in orbit. She felt the ground shake as wreckage burned through the atmosphere. Then, her comm unit crackled, and a voice she did not recognize said, "Commander Somi, this is the human marine transport Sunbreak. We are landing at your position in 4 minutes. Hold on." Somi closed her eyes for 1 second. Just 1 second. Then she opened them and started shouting orders again. When the Marines landed and the tunnel doors opened, Somi walked out into the light for the first time in 6 days. The sky above Ashwal was full of smoke and debris, and through the haze she could see human warships in orbit, sleek, dark shapes that had not been there before. Behind her, 2,000 survivors followed her out of the tunnels, blinking in the sunlight. The remaining Drenhai ground troops surrendered within hours. They had no air support, no reinforcements, and no way off the planet. Somi accepted their surrender with a face made of stone and said nothing to them. There was nothing to say. Aboard the research carrier Silent Peak, far behind the battle lines, Nari studied the data from the engagement. She was a scientist, not a soldier, but the numbers told a story that amazed her. The Drenhai technology was centuries more advanced than anything humanity possessed. Their shields were stronger, their sensors were sharper, their ships were tougher, and they had lost anyway. She wrote a report to Teho. The elder species have not fought a real war in thousands of years. They have the best tools in the galaxy, and no idea how to use them against someone who adapts. They expected us to fight the way they fight. We did not. That is why we won. On Orith Station, chaos consumed the Galactic Council. The Drenhai demanded a full coalition fleet to destroy Earth. Some species agreed. Others were suddenly quiet, suddenly unsure, suddenly looking at the empty seats where the human ambassador used to sit, and wondering if they had made a terrible mistake. Lhasa, the young Pelari aide, spoke up during a junior session. She stood before a room of minor delegates and said, "We provoked them. We attacked their civilians. What did we expect them to do?" She was removed from the session and reassigned to a filing office on a station no one had heard of. But her words had been recorded, and copies spread quietly through the lower ranks of the council. Gen, the Torvan warlord, sat in his private chamber and watched the battle recordings with great interest. He replayed the moment the gravity lance cannons tore through Drenhai shields. He replayed Hana's attack run. He replayed Minho's suicidal charge through the defensive screen. Then he leaned back and smiled. "Interesting," he said to no one. Yuna sent a single message to the council from the human embassy. It was short. "Earth seeks no empire. We want only what you denied us, the right to exist on our own terms. Deny us again, and we will not stop at Ashwal." On his flagship, Teho received a report that the council was assembling a combined fleet at the border of human space. 12 species, over 2,000 warships, a so-called peacekeeping force. He read the report, set it down, and looked at Jiho on the comm screen. "Phase 2, he said quietly. Jiho nodded. He had been expecting this. Teho turned to his bridge crew. Every officer was watching him, waiting. He looked at them the way a father looks at his children before a storm. Not with fear, but with a steady, unshakable certainty that they would survive it together. "They are coming with everything they have," he said. "That means, after this, there will be nothing left to come." The combined fleet of the Galactic Council entered human space on a Tuesday morning by Earth's calendar. 2,300 warships from 8 species, moving in a formation that stretched across half a light-year. It was the largest military force assembled in galactic history since the Border Wars 4,000 years ago. High Speaker Vorin made a public broadcast from Orith Station. His silver face was calm, his voice measured. "This is not an act of aggression. This is a peacekeeping action to restore stability to the galactic order. Humanity will be given the opportunity to stand down and return to its designated status. We bear no ill will." On the Iron Dawn, Do-Hyun played the broadcast for Taeho. When it finished, Taeho turned it off and said, "He is lying to his own people. He is scared." "He should be," Do-Hyun replied. Taeho had spent 30 years studying the species of the Galactic Council. He knew how the Drenhai fought, with brute force and rigid formations. He knew the Polari preferred long-range bombardment. He knew the Torvan were aggressive, but undisciplined. He knew that these species had not fought alongside each other in centuries, and their alliance was held together by politics, not trust. He split his fleet into 3 groups. The first group, led by Hana and the Black Tide, took position at the Ashwall Corridor, a narrow passage between 2 dense asteroid fields that was the only clear route into human core space. It was a natural choke point, and Hana intended to make it a graveyard. The second group, led by Minho, was a fast attack force of 30 light ships. Their job was simple: get behind the enemy, destroy their supply convoys, and disappear before they could be caught. Minho called it hunting. They were not wrong. The third group, the main fleet, 62 warships including the Iron Dawn, hid behind a gas giant called Pale Mother, using its massive magnetic field to mask their signatures from enemy sensors. They would wait there, invisible and patient, until the moment was right. The Council fleet reached the Ashwall Corridor and found Hana waiting. She had positioned her ships in a layered defense, her heaviest cruisers in front, lighter ships behind, and hidden among the asteroids on both sides were weapons platforms that Jiho had deployed 3 weeks earlier. Gravity mines floated in the dark spaces between rocks. Electronic warfare drones waited to activate. The corridor was a trap, disguised as a defensive line. The Council fleet commander, a Drenhai admiral named Borak, saw Hana's small force and assumed it was a token defense. He ordered a full advance into the corridor. Hana let them come. Her ships fired and pulled back, fired and pulled back. Each time she gave up a little ground, drawing the enemy deeper into the corridor. Borak thought she was retreating. He pushed harder. His ships crowded into the narrow passage, and the formation began to compress. Then, Hana gave the signal. The gravity mines activated. Ships that were too close together were pulled into each other by sudden, violent gravitational surges. 3 Polari cruisers collided and broke apart in a shower of metal. The electronic warfare drones came alive, flooding enemy sensors with false signals and static. Drenhai gunners fired at targets that did not exist, while real human ships hit them from angles they could not see. The corridor turned into chaos. Minho's fast attack group struck at the same moment, 3 light-years behind the front line. His ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly on top of the Council fleet's supply convoy. Fuel tankers, ammunition ships, repair vessels. The convoy had a light escort of 12 warships. Minho had 30, and every pilot in his squadron flew like they had nothing to lose. They destroyed 41 supply ships in 9 minutes. The escort was overwhelmed, scattered, and left drifting. Minho lost 4 ships. He did not slow down. He hit a second supply depot an hour later, and then a third. By the time the Council Command realized what was happening, their fleet at the front had no fuel reserves and limited ammunition. Inside the corridor, arguments erupted on the Council Command channels. The Pelari demanded a retreat to regroup. The Drenhai refused. A Torvan captain accused the Pelari of cowardice. A Pelari officer called the Torvans savages. Borak screamed for silence, and got none. Then Teho made his move. The main human fleet emerged from behind Pale Mother, and hit the Council Armada from the left flank. 62 warships, led by the Iron Dawn, firing gravity lance volleys in perfect synchronization. The first volley destroyed 14 ships. The second volley destroyed 11 more. The Council fleet, already confused and divided, was now being attacked from 3 directions. Teho did not rush. He was patient and methodical. He identified the weakest points in the enemy formation and concentrated fire there. When a section of the enemy line collapsed, he pushed ships through the gap and attacked from the inside. It was not flashy. It was not dramatic. It was simply efficient, and it was devastating. Human Marines boarded disabled capital ships. The fighting inside those corridors was close, brutal, and ugly. Humans were smaller than almost every species they fought, but in the tight hallways of a warship, size was a disadvantage. The Marines moved in teams, covering each other, adapting to each new corridor and each new enemy. The Drenhai fought hard. The Pelari surrendered quickly. The others fell somewhere in between. Then the Torvan fleet, 140 ships under Warlord Gen's personal command, did something no one expected. They stopped fighting. Their ships pulled out of the formation, turned away from the battle, and began moving toward open space. Every channel in the Council fleet erupted with demands for Gen to explain himself. Gen sent a single private message to Teho. "I have no quarrel with wolves, only with the sheep who pretend to lead them. Good hunting, Admiral." Then his fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed and was gone. The coalition shattered. Without the Torvan, the combined fleet lost a quarter of its remaining strength in an instant. 2 more species, the Kelvani and the Soreth, saw the Torvan leave, and decided they had seen enough. Their ships disengaged and retreated. Borak, alone on his damaged flagship, finally gave the order to fall back. The retreat was not orderly. Ships fled in every direction, some jumping to random coordinates just to escape. The battle was over. On Orith Station, Yuna and Dohyun watched the battle feeds in silence. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was in emergency session, and even through the walls they could hear the shouting. Species were blaming each other. Alliances that had lasted centuries were cracking apart in real time. "Their communication networks are collapsing," Dohyun said. "Half the council cannot even reach the other half." "Good," Yuna said quietly. "Now they will listen." Aboard the Silent Peak, Nari found something in the captured alien databases that stopped her cold. Hidden files, buried deep under layers of encryption that the Council's own officers probably did not know existed. Records of dozens of younger species that had been quietly crushed, absorbed, or abandoned over the last 10,000 years. Species that showed too much potential. Species that asked too many questions. Species that reminded the elder races of something they did not want to see in the mirror. Humanity was not the first species the Council had tried to destroy. They were simply the first to survive it. Nari forwarded everything to Teho. The human fleet held position at the edge of Council space. They did not advance. They did not retreat. They simply waited. 79 warships hanging in the darkness like a held breath. Teho stood on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, looking at the star map, at the blinking lights that represented the broken remains of the largest fleet the galaxy had ever assembled. Fleet Marshal Ickes had been captured during the boarding actions. He was alive, sitting in a holding cell aboard a human cruiser, staring at the wall. He had not spoken a word since his surrender. Tejo opened a channel to Orit's station. Not to Vorin, not to the Council. Just an open broadcast that anyone could hear. "This is Admiral Tejo of the United Earth Fleet. We have stopped. The next move is yours. Choose carefully." Then he closed the channel and sat down in his chair. The bridge was silent. Every officer waited. Tejo looked out the window at the distant stars and let the silence speak for him. The Galactic Council was falling apart, and everyone on Orith's station could feel it. 3 species had officially withdrawn from the Council alliance. The Torvan Dominion, under Warlord Gen, had publicly declared neutrality and opened direct trade negotiations with Earth. Several smaller species, races that had been silent and obedient for centuries, began sending quiet, encrypted messages to the human embassy. They did not say much. A single word was enough. Support. Vorin sat alone in his private chamber. The silver skin of his face looked gray. His hands shook when he thought no one was watching. He had been High Speaker for 41 years, and in all that time, no one had ever truly challenged him. Now his coalition was broken, his fleet was scattered, and the humans were sitting at his doorstep with weapons that should not have existed, waiting. He called an emergency meeting of the remaining council members. Only 5 species answered. In that meeting, Vorin proposed something that made even his last allies go silent. Deep within the council's most classified archives, there existed a weapon called the Cascade Array. It was ancient, built over 6,000 years ago during a war that most species had forgotten. It was designed to do one thing: destabilize the core of a star, causing it to expand and consume every planet in its system. It had been used once, against a species called the Venari, who had rebelled against the Council long before humans ever looked at the sky. The Venari were gone now. Not conquered, not defeated. Gone. Every world, every city, every child. "We must use it," Vorin said. His voice cracked as he spoke. "If we do not end this now, humanity will grow beyond our ability to contain. They will change everything." The Polari defense minister stared at him. "You want to destroy their sun." "I want to save this council," Vorin replied. 2 of the 5 species present walked out of the room, but 3 remained, and 3 was enough for Vorin to issue the activation order. Lhasa heard about it within the hour. She was working in a filing office on a station that nobody cared about, her punishment for speaking the truth. But she still had friends in low places, people who whispered things they should not have whispered. And when she heard what Vorin was planning, she felt something inside her break. She had watched the Council mock humanity for years. She had watched them authorize the bombing of Ashwal. She had done small things, passed a data chip, spoken a few words, but small things had not been enough. Now Vorin wanted to kill an entire star system, billions of humans, and he wanted to do it with a weapon that the Council had promised would never be used again. Lhasa made her choice. She broke into the archive network, using access codes she had memorized years ago when she worked as Vorin's aide. She found the Cascade Array's activation sequence, copied it, encrypted it, and sent it to the only person in the galaxy she trusted to do the right thing with it. Yuna received the file at 3 in the morning, station time. She read it once, then read it again, then sat very still for a long time. Then she forwarded it to Dohyun, who forwarded it to Tejo, who forwarded it to Jiho and Nari. Nari studied the activation sequence for 6 hours straight. The Cascade Array was not a single weapon. It was a network of ancient satellites hidden in a nebula, each one capable of firing a focused beam that could reach a star from 1,000 light-years away. The targeting system was old, but functional. The power source was something Nari had never seen before. Something that pulled energy from the fabric of space itself. But every system had a weakness. The activation sequence requires a synchronized signal from all satellites at once, Nari told Jiho over a secure channel. If we can inject a corrupted signal into even one satellite, the entire array locks itself as a safety measure. It was designed that way to prevent accidental firing. Jiho worked for 14 hours without stopping. He wrote a signal corruption program, tested it, rewrote it, tested it again. At 2 a.m. on the second day, he transmitted the corrupted signal through a chain of disguised relay drones that Do-hyun had positioned across council space months ago, because Do-hyun always planned for the worst. The signal reached the Cascade Array. One satellite accepted the corrupted code. The safety locks engaged across the entire network. The weapon shut itself down permanently. Vorin tried to activate it the next morning. Nothing happened. He tried again. Nothing. He slammed his hand against the console and screamed at his technicians, but there was nothing they could do. The weapon was dead. He was alone now. Truly alone. Taeho contacted him that evening. It was the first time the two had ever spoken directly. The holographic image showed Taeho sitting in his chair on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, his hands folded in his lap. His face was calm. There was no anger in his eyes, no triumph, no hatred. Just a steady, patient certainty. "Hi, Speaker Vorin," Taeho said. "I am not here to threaten you. I am not here to humiliate you. I am here to tell you what happens next." Vorin said nothing. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff. Taeho laid out humanity's terms. Full sovereign recognition of Earth and every human colony. A permanent seat on the Galactic Council with full voting rights. The release of all classified records regarding suppressed species. And a formal, public acknowledgement that the attack on Ashwal was unprovoked and unauthorized by any legitimate law. "These are not negotiations," Taeho said quietly. "These are the terms. You can accept them, or you can refuse them, and explain to your remaining allies why you chose pride over survival." Vorin accepted. He had no choice. There was nothing left behind him, and everything in front. The ceremony took place in the Grand Chamber on Orith Station, the same room where Yuna had been laughed at for 11 years. The same curved rows of seats, the same high ceiling, the same polished floor. But the room felt different now. Smaller somehow. Or maybe the woman walking to the center of it was simply larger than she had been before. Yuna took her seat as Earth's first council speaker. She did not give a speech. She sat down, placed her hands on the desk in front of her, and looked up at the chamber full of alien faces that had once looked down on her with amusement. The chamber was silent. Nobody laughed. On Ashwal, the rebuilding had begun. Somi oversaw the construction personally. New buildings rose where old ones had burned. A memorial was built in the center of the colony's capital. A simple wall of black stone, with the names of every person who had died in the bombing. Somi visited it every morning. She touched the names of the people she had lost, and said nothing. Because some things did not need words. She was promoted to general. She accepted the rank and went right back to work. Hana was given command of the 1st Expeditionary Fleet, a permanent force that would patrol the borders of human space. She stood on the bridge of the Black Tide and looked out at the stars she had fought to protect. Her first officer, Kijun, asked her if she was relieved that it was over. "It is never over," she said, "but at least now they know what happens if they try." Minho was offered a command position at a desk on Earth. He turned it down in less than 10 seconds and went back to flying. Some people were not built for desks. Nari published the suppressed records, the full history of every species the Council had quietly destroyed or controlled over 10,000 years. The files spread across the galaxy like fire. On dozens of worlds, younger species read the truth for the first time. Some were angry. Some were afraid. Some began to organize. The galaxy would not change overnight, but the first crack had appeared in the wall, and cracks do not close on their own. Jiho returned to his lab and began dismantling the gravity lance prototypes. His assistants were confused. These weapons had won the war. Why destroy them? We built them because we had to, Jiho said, setting a component carefully into a storage case. If we keep them forever, we become the thing we fought against. The point was never to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The point was to make sure no one could treat us like we were nothing. Lhasa was granted asylum on Earth. She landed at a spaceport in a coastal city and stood outside in the rain for 10 minutes, feeling the water on her silver skin, watching humans walk past her with umbrellas and coffee cups and children holding their hands. Nobody stared at her. Nobody told her she did not belong. Yuna met her at the embassy the next day, and when they shook hands, they held on a little longer than necessary. Tejo retired from the Admiralty 6 months after the war ended. His final address was broadcast to every human world and station. He stood at a podium in a simple uniform, no medals, no decorations, and spoke plainly. We did not fight because we wanted war. We fought because they left us no other door. Humanity's greatest weapon was never a ship or a cannon. It was the fact that when they pushed us, every single one of us pushed back. Not because we were told to, because that is who we are. The story ended on a quiet evening, on a hillside on Earth, under a sky full of stars. A young girl sat next to her father in the grass and pointed at a bright light above the horizon. "What star is that?" she asked. Her father looked up and smiled. "That is Ashwal's sun." "Do people live there?" He put his arm around her. "They do now, because someone was brave enough to make sure of it." The girl looked at the star for a long time. Then, she looked at all the others. Hundreds, thousands, millions of tiny lights stretching across the darkness. And she wondered which ones had people who needed someone brave too. She was 7 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her, and the stars were waiting.